Now, Attorney General Merrick Garland is directing the FBI and U.S. attorneys' offices to meet with local law enforcement and look at ways to combat what it calls threats against school officials. This comes after a group that represents school boards urged the DOJ to go harsh on violent offenders, saying, quote, "The classification of these heinous actions could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism and hate crimes." Over the past year, we've seen parents use their voice to stand up against critical race theory in schools or what they see as over-the-top COVID restrictions. Take a look.
No more masks! No more masks! No more masks!
You will listen to us!
Nope. We've had our citizen participation. We're going to fight.
No more masks! No more masks! No more masks!
Winder!
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Since they're gonna leave, we're gonna take control.
You should be ashamed. Your actions have been despicable. It is clear you don't listen to our objections, but the world is listening.
The Western culture and values that brought forth Christianity in the founding documents are being called evil and racist. Even more so, white children are being told untruthfully that all the problems in this country were their fault.
But critics say getting the federal government involved is a step too far.
When you nationalize the effort to go after people based on political speech, when you determine that one size fits all, that the FBI should be looking into these isolated incidents, this isn't a national group that is, garnering support and mobilizing people.
Will Cain, you come to this conversation as both a parent and an attorney. The National School Boards Association is calling on the DOJ to review what they call threats and violence under the Patriot Act, the Gun-Free School Zone Act, the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, the Conspiracy Against Rights Act, the Violent Interference with Federally Protected Rights statute, in addition to calling on the United States Postal Service to intervene. It seems like there's a big snowstorm with a lot of snowflakes.
A lot of snowflakes, though, who are ready to weaponize, Emily, every act, every branch of this government, every military police force in terms of the FBI to protect the system, protect themselves. You said I come to this conversation as both a parent and an attorney. I also come to this conversation as just an extremely concerned American citizen. Look, Emily, I think we laid the groundwork for this. And when I say we, I think so many of us are guilty. Republicans embraced the Patriot Act. You know, there are many out there, not necessarily on the right, who have looked to expand the definition of domestic terrorism. And here many of us sat, and I'll include myself on this, trusting school boards and educators to do what was right. And here they are. First, I was shocked over time with the condescension with which they treated so many people that spoke up in these meetings, but now ready to protect themselves with the most weaponized parts of our government. I am so concerned, Emily, because I believe this is not the end result of all of this we have embraced, but the beginning of the system protecting itself from anybody dare question the direction it wants to pull us.
And Kaylee, what is at the root of this attempt to criminalize parents?
Here is what is at the root of this. Parents have found their voice, and that is unacceptable to the Biden administration. Parents are the problem, is what they say, what they think. Look, let's be honest. The vast majority of parents are not committing any sort of violence or threat against school boards. But Terry McAuliffe, the Democrat gubernatorial candidate, he said the quiet part out loud. Let's take a listen.
I'm not going to let parents come into schools and actually take books out and make their own decision.
You vetoed it.
So, yeah, I've stopped the bill that I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
So parents have no role in what schools do, in teaching children. That's what's at the root of this. And the corollary question to this, Emily, is the FBI and DOJ going to look into school board members who threaten parents? Remember, we talked about that Loudoun County Facebook group that was doxing parents, threatening them with hacking. There was that San Marcos school teacher who dared parents to come at her. So are they going to investigate the opposite? If I had to take an educated guess, I would say no.
And Cheryl, so we're seeing calls on behalf of these school boards, on unions, to use the federal government and law enforcement to, again, criminalize parents. And yet we see, for example, in Democrat-led cities, prosecution rates of under 50%. We're seeing crime spike. We're seeing a zero attention whatsoever being paid to the complete erosion of self-esteem, of self-worth. As we speak right now, there's Facebook testimony happening for a whistleblower for the protection of children. And yet somehow all of the attention should be on parents who are trying their absolute best to protect their children.
Why not address the root cause of all of this? Parents are angry after 18 months of being either shut out of every decision for their children. Now you want the DOJ and the FBI to take the lead here. Parents are domestic terrorists. Do they not hear what they are saying against these poor parents that have just had enough? Deal with the root cause. And that is angry parents that have every right to be furious that their children are being absolutely misled or ignored, and the parents are being gaslighted. I don't blame them one bit for being angry against this. The other thing is this is all going to the courts. Is that really what you want to see education become, a court case that's played out with lawyers? No offense, Emily, I know you're one. But I have to say, come on, folks. I mean, this is just incredulous to me. And at the end of the day, it's a local issue, and these school boards have done nothing but gaslight these parents. And I cannot help but remember that California school board that was busted on a Zoom call. They thought that they were not being recorded, and they sat there, insulted the parents, insulted the teachers, and acted like they were just a bunch of overpaid babysitters who, by the way, did not want the children back in the classroom.
Wow. You know what, Emily, if you would allow me, I want to piggyback on something Cheryl is pointing to. And first of all, we all agree that violence and threats and all of that from either side, Kayleigh pointed out, rightfully so, that it's coming from different directions, right? And that's important to know which school boards are actually engaging. And I consider what Cheryl just described with those teachers on the Zoom, that's bullying, right? Basically. It was bullying that they didn't think anybody was going to see, but that's what it is. So when you take things out of the realm of you and I being able to get together for coffee, for a teacher-parent conference, and you put it in the hands of the DOJ, what does that do for you and me? With all respect to the very talented legal minds at the DOJ, what it does is it takes the onus off of us as one-on-one community members together, me as a parent, you as an educator, finding the best route for our children. That means that we don't matter much. And sooner or later, what these teachers are asking for and these school boards are pushing for, because I saw the list that want Biden to do something now, step in, is it negates their value too. And they're already giving a lot of money. School unions are, teachers unions are, right? So maybe the school boards and the teachers themselves feel more powerful than they should, but they're replaceable. To a union, Emily, they just want their bottom line met. So there's individual relationships that need to go on to raise healthy children in our educational system are not going to be nurtured by taking it and putting it in the higher third party's hands. Not just like the neighbor down the street, but the DOJ. That almost elicits as much concern as the IRS in this, sort of scope, because nobody has control over the DOJ.
And remember, the teachers' unions are dictating CDC guidelines. So education policy and CDC guidelines, I'm sensing a pattern.
Two lanes of government coming at us.
Right, that's exactly right. And Will Harris brings up a great point, which is essentially that what might be an ancillary result is probably a primary focus of these unions and school boards, which is that they don't want to negotiate with parents. That was the whole point. They do not want to engage with them. They want to shut them down, shut off the mic, and instead refer them to a criminal organization to prosecute them. But the reality, too, is that we're seeing a trend where it's becoming top-heavy, because as parents take their children out of these public schools in droves, it will just turn out to be a bobblehead with zero kids at the bottom.
So I think the way you described that, Emily, is exactly what's happening in society at large. And I'm apologizing if I draw this umbrella too wide, but everything is top-heavy. Imagine you're a person right now out there who looks at the science and data on, just for example, vaccinating your child. Well, if you went to YouTube, you wouldn't be able to find those videos because they're being increasingly taken down. Anything that questions the top-heavy, top-down, authoritarian, one-sided mind on anything, really on anything, is shut out, is told to be quiet, is shoved out of a school board meeting. And now, while Kayleigh's right that it's the Biden administration enacting this across every aspect of our society, now we're going to use the heaviest hands of government, DOJ, FBI, and everything to come down on you. The only thing I would say is mess with parents at your own peril. This right here is the tip of the spear, and this is a difference maker. Don't mess with parents and their kids.
There we go. Mama Bear and Papa Bear is rearing up next. All right, guys, stay with us.